Good evening and welcome to the Online Warriors podcast. As always, I am one of your hosts, Legal86, and I am joined by the vivacious Nerd Bomber.
Shazam.
Shazam indeed. And the happy-go-lucky, carefree, effervescent Tactic One.
Captain Marvel. Get it? See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
I see what you did there.
We're back. Spring has sprung. I feel like I probably started the podcast with that for like the past 3 episodes because spring keeps springing. It's warm, it's lovely, and we got a lot to talk about today. So let's just kind of round it up with the What Are You Up To Wednesday, and I think I'm gonna start today, which I know is it's not what we usually do, but we're trying to keep things fresh for the listeners here at Online Warriors. We have a lot of long meetings where we talk about how to keep the listeners engaged. And this is the result. So I'm here to talk about my life, which I am kind of going to make my What Are You Up To Wednesday into a couple of recommendations. First is a film. I haven't been seeing very many new movies lately, but I recently watched the classic horror film The Shining. Have you guys seen The Shining before?
Yes, I have.
Yep.
What did you think of this? I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but I got a lot of thoughts.
I mean, I think I enjoyed it. I don't remember. I watched it a really long time ago. And it was one of those ones where it was like, it's a classic. You have to like it. So you don't really think too hard about it. You just watch it.
So I don't think it was for me. That's where I am with it right now.
Think about when that came out. So our genre of horror films are more suspense, in your face, loud bang to try to make you scared. That came out in the time when Pet Sematary came out, and these things were more psychological thrillers. They weren't in your face. They were more like twisted, creepy, eerie, scary kind of movies. So very different than what we're exposed to as a horror genre of our generation.
And I'm okay with that aspect of I read the book, and the book is first of all, the movie is quite different from the book. Which might have been one of the reasons I was disappointed. I read the book first, liked the book. I'm a big Stephen King guy. So I watched the movie and I was like, what is going on here? Also, some of the acting was a little hammy. And I will say, Jack Nicholson was fantastic. I think because he's actually literally insane. You watch that movie and you're like, he's not even acting. He's just literally a crazy person. Mm-hmm. It made a lot of interesting choices. There was a lot of very loud music. You'd be listening to some dialogue and then they'd play some music, and I was watching it at home, so either me and my girlfriend would be like, geez, we gotta turn it down because it's gonna shake the paintings off the walls. I don't know. It was interesting. I've watched a couple of Stanley Kubrick movies, and I haven't really jived with them at all. So maybe he's just not for me. He's too much of a he's too what's the word? You know how you watch an Academy Award winning movie and you're like, I don't even know what this was. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. I get that.
Off the beaten path, kind of.
Off the beaten path, but also I don't. Now I might upset some people by using the word pretentious, but it felt pretty pretentious. Huh. It's like what if we made a horror movie that was trying so hard to be art that it just annoyed Legal86 a lot. Well, and that's what the movie was.
The quote artistic point of view of that movie was really to take kind of winks at the book and try to keep some of the references in the book alive from that imagery standpoint. So I don't know that artistic is the right point of view or description.
Yeah, I think that, how do I put this? First of all, Stanley Kubrick is known for being super, super specific, and he wears actors down because he does 100,000 takes of one shot just to get it right. And the whole movie felt very during dialogue scenes, one person would say a line, and then there'd be a long pause, and then another person would say a line, and there'd be a long pause, and there'd just be a shot of just looking down a hallway for 20 seconds, and I'm like, what are we even looking at? It's just it's stuff like that where the scenery and the imagery was great, but there's certain moments where you're like, man, he's just being obnoxious. He's just being an obnoxious filmmaker. So that's how I felt about The Shining. Not exactly a recommendation, I guess, because clearly I didn't care for it too much. The other recommendation I do have, which I did like quite a bit, is a game called Farpoint VR. I finished a video game which
I feel like that's a new thing for you.
yeah, it's rare on this podcast, I will say. I feel like rarely do I come on here and say I finished a video game. I recently did it with Spider-Man, and I've now done it with Farpoint VR, which Farpoint VR was 1,000 million% shorter, which is probably why. Farpoint is super cool. I think I mentioned it before because I got it for Christmas, and I'm just now finishing it. So that should tell you what my video game pace is. But
how many hours of gameplay was it?
I do not know. I would ballpark probably between 8 and 12. It's like it's a shorty. It was great. So Farpoint is, I had the aim controller. This is on the PS4, and I had the aim controller, and it's the full room VR experience. So like, you don't really walk around, but you're like aiming and shooting at stuff. And the premise is that you've gone through a wormhole and you're like trapped on this planet that's like literally in another galaxy. And you're like shooting creatures and like trying to find your way off the planet, and pretty generic storyline wise, but the VR aspect of it was just, I have limited exposure to that, so it was like super, super cool. I'd recommend it. I'd strongly recommend the aim controller, though. I can't imagine playing it with a regular controller. It probably would not have been as fun.
So
Actually,
my biggest question.
Right, go ahead.
How is the motion sickness problem?
That's a good question. So I have a lot of motion sickness issues. It's one of the many reasons that I don't like flying on a plane. I get car sick very easily. I don't like amusement parks very much, but I had really no problem. I know that my girlfriend did try it, and she was like, she played for like 5 minutes and was like, I cannot do this. So it's definitely like a non-zero effect. Mm-hmm. It just didn't get to me for whatever reason. It might have helped that I was sitting down. You can play it either standing up or sitting down. I opted for the sit down way, which is what I would recommend. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much of an issue. I was surprised. I have had issues occasionally with the VR with that, but they're actually pretty few and far between.
I'm trying to think. I know. So there were some games where I didn't have any issues at all, and then I did try. Oh shoot, Firewall is the game that came with the aim when we bought it, and it wasn't terrible, but I definitely had some like disorienting moments because you're like walking around, and
right.
I remember thinking like, I think I need to sit down because I feel kind of like I wasn't nauseous, I just felt disoriented.
It's definitely a weird feeling. So like, far and away the weirdest part of it is moving the control stick on the aim to walk and then not actually walking, because obviously it looks like you're standing up and walking around. That's the whole point of VR, and it's super cool, but it definitely takes some adjustment.
I wonder if you like walk in place, like if you like consciously try not to move forward but you just walk in place, I wonder if that would make it any better.
There's definitely a chance of that. When I first got the game, I was definitely experimenting more with like, okay, what if I'm standing up? But then I was like, just standing up for like an hour, and like, I just don't ever stand up that way. Like,
you know what they say, sitting's the new smoking, so that's good for you.
That is true. Probably like shortening my life so much every day by just like never being standing. I don't regret it. I'm going to live fast and die young. In any case, my next VR experiment is going to be Doom VR, which is like Farpoint if Farpoint was injected with steroids and soundtracked by hard rock. So we'll update. Other than that, I don't really have much in the way of updates.
If you can survive that and come up with some kind of a remedy to solve with motion sickness type dealy, let us as well as the listeners know.
So you suffer from it as well, Tactic?
For me, I don't suffer while playing, but the second I take it off, I'm like ungodly seasick. It's weird.
I get that. There's definitely a disorientation. Like I don't think I've ever. It's not like a video game, a standard video game where you can like I would play Spider-Man for like 2 hours and like not even feel it, because that game. First of all, that game's amazing, but second of all, it's just you're looking at a screen. I don't think I ever played Farpoint for more than an hour at a time, which probably explains why it took me so long to finish it when it was like a super short campaign. I don't even know if I could handle playing it for more than an hour. Wouldn't recommend it if you're thinking about it. But yeah, I'll update on the Doom experience. What about y'all? What have you been up to?
Well, I guess I'll go. So, I started playing The Walking Dead, the final season, the Telltale game. Or really, I should call it Skybound because Telltale went defunct and then they saved the game. And so far, I'm only 2 episodes in. There's 4 in total. And I'm really enjoying it. And I'm kind of sad. Like, I have a feeling that I know where the ending is going to take me. And I'd have, like, avoided the internet to try to make sure that I don't spoil it for myself. Because they just released the final episode, I think it was last week. So, I'm just having a lot of fun with it. Embracing spending my last few episodes with Clementine. Trying not to be a jerk to people, because that's the character that I've always played her as, and just having a lot of fun with it.
So it doesn't track with the show at all, correct?
No. Have you played any of the Walking Dead games?
I have not. This is probably one on the super long list of games that you have recommended to me that I have not played.
So, I'd have to recommend, if you ever do play, go in as blind as you can. I feel like it's kind of hard at this point because the first game, or the first season, came out so long ago. But there's just so much about the game that it's just amazing storytelling. Like, it's more of a cinematic experience, I would say, than it is a really, like, interactive game type feel. Like, Tactic has been watching me play. I know he played the first season and part of the second season, so he has kind of, like, some familiarity with the characters. And it's just something, like, you can play together and make decisions as you go together. And it's not, like, super stressful. And each episode is only, like, 2 hours. You can kind of... It's like a little movie snippet every time.
For me, I am a very animated gamer. And what I mean by that is I'm jerking, I'm tilted, craning my neck around to try to get a better view. You know, all the stereotypical things that people do when they're playing to, quote, give them an advantage that don't actually do anything. Right. And this was the game that I played after I got my gallbladder removed because it is like a movie that you follow through the choices and play it that way as opposed to the aggressive button mashing and neck craning.
So if you played like Rocket League after you got your gallbladder removed, you would have like
I probably
ripped open
like,
a scar or something.
Yeah.
Jeez, you go hard, man.
Yeah, I get sweaty.
How many episodes total? I mean, how many seasons? How many episodes are we talking about here?
So I want to say there's 4 total in terms of the different seasons, and I think the episode count varies from season to season. So like this final season, there's only 4, but part of that was just because Telltale was in financial trouble and they just wanted to kind of get it out the door. So I think they kind of condensed the story as much as they could. But
that's still a huge amount of content. Didn't you say it's like 2 hours an episode? So that's still a lot of content.
So each season is somewhere around like 10 to 15 hours of content.
Wowie.
And I mean, granted, I've played them over the years. I don't even remember. I think the first game came out maybe in 2014. I could be totally off base. But it was like a decent chunk of time ago.
And interesting. So it sounds like a pretty big commitment, but you're really selling it. I'm looking up when the first season was. I have my research department on it. 2012.
2012. Wow.
Is apparently when it started. And yeah, the first season was 5 episodes. So yeah, like 10 hours. That's pretty intense. Is this like a shooting situation? There's no. It's less actiony and more decision-y. It sounds like.
Right. So there's a lot of like there's dialogue choices. So someone will say something and you have like 15 seconds to try to answer them and choose between 4 different things. And depending on how you answer, that'll kind of shape the story in a different way. There are a few like quick time event type deals. Those I kind of suck at because you spend a lot of the time interacting with dialogue and then all of a sudden there's like this fast-paced thing and I can never
catch you off guard.
I can never remember what buttons are where, and so I end up just like hitting the wrong thing or not being fast enough because I'm not expecting it. But
and, like blowing somebody's head off. Like are these like devastating choices where like you kill people if you do it wrong?
Well, I mean, you get like eaten by a zombie kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, that seems pretty bad.
So, yeah. But I would definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't. I think with your penchant for storytelling and
cinematics.
Yeah, the cinematic,
when you said that word.
Yeah. I think you would be really invested in the stories and the characters, and the fact that you basically get to just live through a movie and shape the decisions and how it turns out is pretty fun. I enjoyed it.
I definitely dig like the choose your own adventure-y kind of mechanic. Like I don't think that's used enough because like there's a couple games I've played where that's kind of prominent. Like Quantum Break comes to mind, where you have those choice points. There's The Last of Us, that horror game that you never finished.
I haven't even started that yet.
Not The Last of Us, but I always get the name wrong. We talked about this on the last podcast and couldn't figure out the name. The one with the girl.
Until Dawn?
What's it called? Until Dawn. Yeah, that's right. That one has some of those choice points as well. I like stuff like that. I don't think that happens enough. So, duly noted.
And I just think so Telltale, I know we discussed it when they went under, but I really thought it was interesting. So the employees of Telltale who are working on The Walking Dead, the final season, they've been invested in Clementine as the main character throughout most of the games. And they were really invested in just finishing off her story. So when Telltale closed, I thought it was really interesting how Robert Kirkman was so dedicated to seeing the end of this character that they all loved, that he actually hired the developers who were from Telltale working on the game, brought them into Skybound, his own basically branch of his company that is dedicated to games, and allowed them to finish it. Bought the rights from Telltale and finished the game. So I'm excited and good to support those developers because I know they put a lot of hard work and effort into the game.
That's certainly indicative of a pretty high level of dedication to a character, to storyline, which is certainly something you like to see if you're me at least. Tech, what about you? What's the scoop?
So I've just been kind of floating around these past 2 weeks, honestly.
Literally?
Yeah, I've been enjoying watching the Walking Dead game that Nerd Bomber has been playing. Still chipping away at little landscaping projects around the house, but around the yard. But the weather's been crappy, so it's just kind of been floating around. Nothing crazy. The most exciting thing, which is a perfect segue into one of our topics, is we did go and see the new Shazam movie.
Okay, so before I assume you have a lot to say. I have not seen it yet, so de-spoilerify as possible.
I think
your
there's
analysis.
A lot of good ways to talk about this movie without even addressing the plot necessarily. There's some big things that I know I'll try to keep Tech in check about. One of the bigger reveals towards the end. I'll try to keep him under wraps.
Dude, stop saying there's a reveal at the end.
Well, every movie has a big reveal at the end. They're all superhero movies. That's how it works.
And I've heard it's amazing, so I probably will see it at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I will start out by saying, so we are big Chuck fans. I am a huge Chuck fan. It's been really rewarding to see both Zach Levi and Yvonne Strahovski have really good and developed careers over the last few years, because Yvonne Strahovski's obviously been in The Handmaid's Tale, and Zachary Levi, so I've obviously followed a lot of the Chuck cast. He had a fundraiser organization called Nerd HQ, and every year they would go to San Diego Comic-Con and raise money for the Smile Foundation. And he's a really big nerd in a good way, super invested in comic book characters, super invested in video games, and just super involved in nerd culture.
Isn't he invested in wine too?
He did collaborate with Stephen Amell to create the Nerd HQ wine, which we do have. But
wait,
it was
wine like you drink?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Red wine or white wine?
It was a pink wine, actually.
A rosé. Interesting.
Rosé, yeah. But it was just really cool to see somebody who is so invested in comic book characters and comic book lore just become one of the characters. I thought that was really cool. And I thought he was a perfect fit for the movie because it was very... most of the DC movies are really dark and kind of the exact opposite of every Marvel movie I think I've seen for the most part. And This is one of... besides Aquaman, the first DC movies that was really just light and entertaining. It had a lot of good heart.
Well, so here's my comment with respect to that. Marvel does lighthearted well. DC generally, when they do this lighthearted kind of funny type movies, it's awkward. It seems forced. The humor's not there. I will say, this one seemed natural, and it was enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, because that was how Aquaman. So I did see Aquaman, and like, you're right that Aquaman definitely like took a lighter route than like Justice League and Batman vs Superman and everything. I still didn't like it because it was just like, it felt awkward, and none of the humor was really that funny. And like, I don't know, like Shazam seems good to me, knowing pretty much nothing about the story. It seems like it has such a good heart. Like it seems like it really cares deeply about this idea of like, this kid can become this superhero, and it's so fun in all the ways you would expect.
Would you say it's pure of heart? Have you seen the movie?
I mean, without having seen the movie, it seems that way. Like, having watched the trailers and like you said, knowing Zachary Levi's background, and like how fun must it have been for him to play that role and be that role for kids and for everyone. Like, yeah, it just seems like it had a lot of that going on.
And honestly, speaking of having like the kid-oriented aspect to it, what is really the last superhero movie that's really been kid-oriented?
Oh boy, I can answer this.
Maybe Spider-Man.
I was gonna say Spider-Man. That was my first, because he's like in high school, right? Like, so that's like kind of the route there. Otherwise, it's like Iron Man's like 40. It's like, I'm not 40 yet. I can't be Iron Man.
And I mean, even like all of the other Marvel movies, they're relatively like high violence. They have like adult content almost. Like, there's more on like kind of PG-13 content, where I felt like Shazam, you could take your kids to go see.
Yeah, it does seem more, and again, my perspective is fully informed by marketing material, but it does seem more on that end of like, oh, this kid, because the idea, like, correct me if I'm wrong, the kid says Shazam and turns into Zachary Levi, right? And he's like a superhero who can like do a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
That's like the basic gist. So like, I mean, and that is a premise right there that's like totally geared towards kids. So like, all of the marketing material that I saw was like, hey, take your kid and see this movie, because I'm sure this kid like would love to have this power. You know, like, what was the one with and this is not a good movie and probably not a good comparison to draw. What's the one where the kid gets Shazam, or gets Shaq to come out of the lamp? Isn't that like a similar thing?
I think it's also called Shazam.
I think it's like Shazam. Kazam. Yeah, like Kazam or something. Like, movies like that, you know? We need more of those.
So it was funny that you mentioned this, because there's that, I forgot what the effect is, but it's there. Everyone thinks that there is a movie starring Sinbad called Shazam or Kazam or something like that, and it doesn't exist. And it blows my mind, because I remember
Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect, exactly. Yeah. And like, I 100% remember this movie existing, and it does not exist. Sinbad was a genie, wasn't he? This was like a thing that happened.
I don't know. I mean, I just looked up Kazam, because it is called Kazam. It came out in 1996. That's the movie with Shaq, and he doesn't come out of the lamp. He's a genie that comes out of a magic boombox and grants the boy 3 wishes. It grossed $19 million of its $20 million budget, so it was a failure. Shazam is doing much, much better than that, as far as I understand. But yeah, like, it just seems like, if I remember correctly, I looked up at the Rotten Tomatoes consensus, because I do that whenever a movie comes out, and the term that it used was wish fulfillment, as like something that superhero movies have arguably forgotten about, is like this idea that they're supposed to be about wish fulfillment, of like a kid being like, I wish I had this power, or I wish I was this hero. Like, the Marvel movies don't deal with that anymore. The Marvel movies are like, here's all these heroes that are established, let's make them fight, you know? So I think, like, to me, like, I don't know how the movie is written, I don't know how the plot lays out at all, but like, the premise kind of encourages that kind of sense of wonderment of like, oh, this kid suddenly has all these powers, what's he going to do with them?
Yeah, it was definitely, as someone who has commented multiple times that they're burned out on the whole superhero movie genre just from too many Marvel movies, and now I feel like everything is just this weird interconnected dark plot that I'm just ready to be done with. This was super refreshing, and I did not feel like it almost felt like a completely separate thing. Like I could walk out of this movie saying, hey, I really like superhero movies again.
So what is the extent, and this is like a super spoilery inviting question, so feel free to not answer, but like what is the extent that Shazam is trying to like tie in with
Almost
the
0%.
failing DC? Yeah, because like that's if I was a DC movie director or writer, my goal at this point would be I want to distance myself from the train wreck that is the rest of these movies.
Like, there are some winks, and I think they even showed it in a trailer. Like, there are some winks like, oh, hey, I have Superman's bullet. Like, when he meets one of the other kids in the movie. So, like, they make reference to those characters being there, but they don't really tie in at all. And honestly, it's more just like, it could have been like a pop culture thing at, like, the very broadest level. Like, they did not really intersect with the DC universe at all.
And I think that's what's needed. But like, and this is true of Marvel as well. Is like, I hope very much when Endgame comes out, which is in like a couple weeks, by the way. I hope that after that movie happens, Marvel is as an entity is kind of like, all right, let's take a break and like move back to stories that are at least remotely self-contained.
Do you know what's kind of interesting? And this is probably super far-fetched, but. So, Marvel, as much as we want to hate the thought of this, is going to continue expanding and continue making movies because they're making millions.
Yeah.
Okay, money talks.
Billions.
Right. And one thing that I think would be a totally unforeseen spin is instead of Marvel versus like all these different villains, what if they did something like Marvel versus Capcom type dealy, where they like introduced alternate universes into it?
I think so. I like the idea on paper. The rights to character. I mean, Spider-Man's rights are already tangled up. Like, how are you going to get all the rights to like all these different characters? And like, I feel like that from the business end, it's a nightmare. From a like wanting to see it end, I'm definitely on board.
I just want more self-contained movies again. That's
all
I want.
Live action Mega Man.
That would actually be pretty cool.
But that's the point I was trying to get at, was like, I hope that after Endgame they shift back to more like, all right, let's make some self-contained movies that don't have these constraints, because the other big thing about it is that when you're writing a movie, when you're writing Captain Marvel, for example, you're probably being told by Kevin Feige and a bunch of other really important, really rich people, like, okay, there's a bunch of things you need to include in this movie. There's basically an electric fence that you have to stay within in terms of time period, in terms of what happens to the characters, et cetera, et cetera. It would be so refreshing to have a superhero movie that was not that. That was just, we are going to be what we're going to be, and we don't care what anyone else is.
I mean, isn't that why Deadpool was so successful?
Well, that's a perfect example, because it really is. Like, any quote unquote tie-ins that it made with X-Men and like that whole franchise was like tongue in cheek of like, we're not going to adhere to that, we're not going to be that, we're going to make fun of that, if anything, you know. So like, that is a huge part of its success. I think probably the larger part of its success is that it was playing to a different R-rated market and like sense of humor. But like, that was definitely a big part, is that it was more self-contained, and it didn't have these aspirations to fold its protagonist into this super team of like, you know, Avengers or Justice Leaguers or whatever.
Do you think we all have like Stockholm syndrome at this point? Like, Marvel just has us, like, we love our captors because we have to see what's happening and like we're this invested, but nobody actually really likes it that much anymore.
I don't know if Stockholm syndrome is the word I would use, but like there's for sure a Marvel fatigue. Like, if you asked the general populace, are you tired of Marvel movies? At least 75% would say yes.
But yet we all keep going back for more.
right. We all go, and like I'm tired of them, but I'm gonna go see Endgame, and I'm really excited for Endgame. I think it's gonna be amazing. But at the same time, like they're on this like schedule at this point of like once every couple months, here's the experience you're getting. I think movies like Avengers and like Avengers Endgame and like those team up movies do enough unique things where they differentiate themselves and become much more exciting. And also like Endgame, you're gonna see people die, which I think is like something I've been wanting, as dark as that is. Like I want, like let's spin the field a little bit. We know it's gonna happen. These contracts are up. I want to see Captain America get punched so hard in the face that like his brain pops out.
Absolutely.
You know? Like even Iron Man. I love Iron Man, but like it is time for him to die. I thought he was gonna die in the last movie, and he basically did. And then they were like, "No, we can't kill him yet." It's like, come on, just kill him. We know it's coming. Just do it. What are you afraid of? Anyways, back to Shazam. Kind of took a bit of a tangent there, but so you guys like we're talking like 5 out of 5 territory for you guys. It seemed like you really liked it.
I'm gonna do it out of 10.
Okay,
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think I'm around the same place. So I really liked it, but just where I'm at in terms of my movie fatigue, I think I'm reserving like those 9s and 10s for stuff that really does something different. And I don't think Shazam really didn't do anything different. It was just a return to form for superhero movies, which is called for in today's movie climate. So there it really succeeded. It did everything really well, but it wasn't groundbreaking.
Duly noted. I will possibly give my update if I see it. I'll probably have seen it by the time we do our next episode. And I can give a brief shout out and give my out of 10 mark as well. Let's stay on the movie track quick. And actually, let's stay in the DC universe quick and talk about this Joker trailer. This was, I think, last week that this came out. Mm-hmm. So wildly unconventional. Like that's like the only thing I have to say about it.
So,
but like,
can I just make a super bold statement?
Please. I love bold statements.
I feel that this is going to be the best Joker impersonation that we've seen. Now, here's why.
That's hard to imagine, but okay.
Here's why. The Joker is chaotic evil, okay? There's no other rhyme or reason. And so the early Jokers were always, I'm a thief kind of standpoint. Then you got into the more psychotic Jokers when you move towards Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger. But Jack Nicholson, it just seemed more like he was just redoing the Shining role, which nothing really new there. Then Heath Ledger...
wasn't he more of like a mobster kind of guy? Like, I never saw the Jack Nicholson
one. He tried being a little kooky crazy and random, but it was more just like a... It was more of the traditional robber, but a little bit of crazy Shining mix into there. Right. So then the first real chaotic bad that we saw was Heath Ledger, which I currently will stand is the best one that we've seen at this point. I don't even want to talk about the ones that came after.
Easily.
So we're just going to pretend Jared Leto just didn't exist. I would prefer to
I think we're all in agreement of
like
that.
Like that just never happened.
So
God, the grills.
The biggest takeaway in this trailer is and the thing that I kind of honed in on is they almost show this kind of Oedipus relationship with his mother, where it's like borderline creepy, but he sees it as status quo, which plays into the psychosis beautifully.
I definitely agree that like I think in terms of like seeing a person who is actually disturbed, like obviously Heath Ledger's Joker was super disturbed, and like Heath Ledger we know now had his demons that were associated with playing that role, but like that was in a sense more of this like giddy, very animated, very maniacal kind of portrayal. This is going to be more of like the trailer, he's just a depressed guy.
It's going to be dark. It's going to be very dark, and I'm very excited for it.
It's going to be super dark. It's going to be totally different.
I think this is the Joker that we're finally going to see him wear someone else's face.
Does he do that in the comics?
Yeah.
Like permanently, like he sews it on, or like
yeah.
Oh God.
You're not a comic reader, right?
No, I own 3 comic books.
Man, I am going to suggest to you some really good Joker comics, just Batman comics where the Joker is just really messed up, and I just urge you to read them. I mean, it's super disturbing, but also like
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, offshoot question, based partly on my playing of the Batman video games, the Red Hood is also the Joker, right?
No.
Or am I wrong?
Well,
no?
which Red Hood? There's 2 Red Hoods.
Okay, I'm going to #spoiler. If you haven't played this game, which is many years old at this point, there's a spoiler incoming.
Is the Red Hood in the game? I thought they just like referenced
No,
it.
this is just the comic book. So the
Red Hood
is originally Joker. Joker is just a thief. Not even. He's a regular guy who there was a serial thief that wasn't a real person, and they made him wear this mantle to run a robbery. And when he was wearing this mantle, he got then kicked into the vat and became the Joker, but he was under the guise of the Red Hood at that time.
Right, I guess. I knew there was like he kicks into like a vat of acid or something and like burns his face off.
So fast forward to the future where there's Robin and Batman. And Robin at the time is played by Jason Todd. And Jason Todd gets beaten to death with a crowbar by the Joker. Okay.
Yeah.
Then he gets brought back to life by Ra's al Ghul, who he doesn't come back the same. He kind of comes back cynical, and he's not afraid to kill bad guys at this point. And for symbolic purposes, he takes on the guise of the Red Hood.
I see. Well, in fairness, if I had been killed and brought back to life, I would probably be no longer afraid to kill people, like having been dead. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, question: do you think that Joaquin Phoenix is going to get kicked into a vat of acid at any point during this movie?
I hope so.
I don't know. Like, again, watching the trailer, it's like not a lot happens. It's just like a guy being depressed and like getting into random fights on the subway. Like,
I hope so here's where I'm nervous. I hope that's like the first 30 minutes of the movie.
And then you hope it takes off and he like becomes a crime guy. So
I hope it ends with him finally to being the Joker, and it's all and the call it the hour between the first 30 minutes of depressed guy is him building up to his quote final form.
The idea in general of like an origin story for a villain, specifically the Joker, is like whoever came up with that idea at the DC whatever offices, it's brilliant. It's a great idea because he's like one of the most captivating villains like ever. Like how have we not seen that movie yet? Is the question that I ask myself.
Well, we have.
Now, have we seen it?
No. He's always, in every cinematic experience, the Joker is always a secondary character. While he might play a big part and is basically like Batman's foil, we've never actually seen his origin story more than just like a 5-minute maybe montage snippet thing.
Yeah, like I think devoting an entire movie to it has like a huge amount of potential. And like also getting Joaquin Phoenix, who I believe won an Oscar for the Johnny Cash movie. Like he's a widely renowned as like a great actor.
I recommend watching. The reason why I say we have is not because of the classic live action ones. If you want to watch a movie kind of about the Joker's origin story, it's super dark. It's called Batman: The Killing Joke. It shows the Joker's origin, where he's under the guise of the Red Hood. It shows the vat. He rapes Barbara Gordon. He paralyzes her. Like it's very dark.
And honestly,
right.
The voice acting, and I know that we just talked about some really dark stuff, but the voice acting too, Mark Hamill plays the Joker, and arguably I think, so when you think about like the best Jokers that have ever, like the best actors for the Joker, you usually think of the live action roles, but I think Mark Hamill is honestly one of the best Jokers to date. He was
great in the games.
in the games. He's been in so many of the animated features. He is just one of the most dynamic Jokers out there. I can't imagine him in the live action role just because, I mean...
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luke Skywalker.
You'd see his face and it would be done. But, yeah.
Incidentally, Mark Hamill, and this is probably how he nailed down the voice role. They just announced like last week or something, the new Chucky movie. He's the voice of Chucky.
Mark Hamill has a really extensive voice acting career.
Which is really smart when you think of, because like he's Luke Skywalker. He probably was getting like typecast, and he was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm going to be a voice actor where I can't be as easily typecast and just be the freaking Joker. Like, yeah. Shout out to Mark Hamill. He's doing it right. When does I always want to like close up these movie discussions with like the Joker will be released on blah blah blah, but I don't know, so I'm going to Google it really quick. The Joker movie is releasing on October 4th, 2019. So unfortunately, we have quite a while to wait.
But honestly, I feel like that's a really good timing. It's going to be kind of creepy, and they're doing it right around Halloween, and I just feel like that's such a good time slot for it.
People also search for Batman: The Killing Joke. It's right here. So.
I could tell you it will be in my fantasy movie league pick.
Honestly, I think it could be like the sleeper hit. Even in a year when Avengers Endgame is coming out, I think that would be one of like the biggest superhero realm movies to come out this year.
I hope that's true, because again, I think the idea of it is incredibly good. So I hope it works out.
See, just these comic movies in general, there's so much good story to draw from. Like, there's such an extensive history of comic book characters, comic book villains, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, and just seeing them do something new in the cinematic space, I think is fantastic.
Right, and I think that one of the reasons that they're so successful is that there is that huge depth of material to draw on, but the genre has stagnated, I think, to this point where they're all the same, and they're drawing on that source material very lazily. So seeing something fresh, something like an origin story for a villain, is, I think, what the genre needs. So,
agreed.
Check it out, October 4th, 2019. We don't have much time to talk about Antonio Brown, but I feel like we should talk about Antonio Brown. Tactic told me before we started recording this that he didn't know what Antonio Brown had done, or I guess what the latest thing he had done.
What has he done?
What hasn't he done lately is the real question.
So basically, Antonio Brown was a wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was his second wide receiver. The guy next to him was Juju Smith-Schuster, who's like 20 years old. He's like basically a kid, super beloved by the franchise. Great player. I had him in at least one of my fantasy leagues. He's amazing. He happened to fumble on their last game of the season, and it cost them the game and theoretically the playoffs, which obviously, upset him and was probably a hard thing for him to come back from. And, basically Antonio Brown's just like dragging him through the mud for it. I'm trying to look up the entire story now because I don't even know how it started. I just know where we are.
So right now the post that he directly posted about Juju Smith-Schuster, his last one, has been deleted. But it all started with Antonio Brown basically saying, like, keep your feelings off the internet or keep your emotions off the internet, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he went on his normal thing basically saying, like, oh, Steelers fans are just being overly emotional and need to move on. And then somebody called him out then saying that, because Juju Smith-Schuster was voted the team MVP at the end of the year. So then he he replies to that tweet and says, emotion, boy fumbled the whole postseason in the biggest game of the year. Everyone went blind, too busy making guys famous, not enough reality these days. By the way, check the list. So then Juju Smith-Schuster pretty much said, I don't understand why, like, I've never done anything but respect this guy. I don't understand why he's attacking me out of nowhere. Basically, then subtweeted and said, keep your emotions off the internet. And so then, weirdly enough, Antonio Brown screenshotted
this is the funniest part to me. Yeah.
And I'm not really sure what his point was, but when Juju Smith-Schuster was in college, he had DM'd Antonio Brown basically saying, hey, really respect you. You're a great guy on and off the field. And any tips for a college receiver, paraphrasing here, who wants to elevate his game. And somehow I don't know how Antonio Brown thought he was insulting Juju by screenshotting that and posting it, but it really backfired because everyone was like, okay, so you're basically proving that he is respectful and did nothing but look up to you? Like, what is your point here, buddy?
He literally used the word respect in the message. Like, I respect you. And for some reason, Antonio Brown was like, this guy, you know, like drag me through the mud. And like, so he like posted this screenshot and everyone's like, what is this whole thing is like Antonio Brown has a warped mind. Like Juju's asking the question.
It seems to me that he's jealous that he didn't get MVP. And he's saying, I should have got MVP. Look, this guy looks up to me and you guys called him MVP.
Well, his ego can be seen from space.
Yeah.
And coupling that with the amount of like head trauma that this guy has sustained, it's not far to say like Juju Smith-Schuster asking this question of like, hey man, what did I ever do to you? And you know what the answer is? Is nothing. Nothing. It's
honestly,
just he's just Antonio Brown's just a head case. He has since been traded to the Oakland Raiders, by the way. I don't know if we mentioned that.
But like even someone posted a video in reply to Antonio Brown's tweet, and Antonio Brown got like a really nasty hit to the head, and the next play, Juju Smith-Schuster basically tried to retaliate and stand up for him. So it's like, dude, this guy had your back and like only looked up to you. What are you doing?
One of the things that Juju is known for, I think, is that because that hit, he laid that hit on the guy that hit Antonio Brown is a Vontaze Burfict, if you're an NFL fan. Notably, notoriously dirty player who just like goes for head shots and like tries to twist guys' ankles and stuff. So he lays out Antonio Brown. The next play, Juju lays him out. It draws a great home crowd reaction. Everyone's like, yeah, you know, stand up for your buddies. And then Antonio Brown turns around and is like, no, I hate this guy. It's all very interesting, you know.
Antonio Brown also can't seem to get over the whole Buffalo thing, and I'm not really sure why. Like,
he's still through his Twitter now, and he's still posting about it. Yeah, I don't get that either. I'm just now scrolling through his Twitter for the first time in quite a while, and there's still like, he like retweeted Buffalo rumbling. Like, he's just, I don't get it. Let it go, man.
It almost seems to me like maybe he wasn't the reason the Buffalo thing fell through. Because why would you be so hung up on it? I'm so confused.
I mean, as a Buffalo fan, Antonio, I'm talking to you now, Antonio, if you're listening. I assume you're listening. We've moved on.
And we dodged a bullet. Holy crap.
We're happy to have moved on. You're welcome to move on as well. In fact, I encourage you to do so. So that has been your Online Warriors sports update.
I think we have one other news point about something that we're super excited about over here. It's not really a news point, just wanted to mention that at PAX East, Borderlands 3 was announced. They gave it a trailer, they gave it a release date coming out this fall, and I'm just super pumped about it. I feel like it was one of my favorite games. We played it together when we first started dating.
Couch co-op.
It's one of the few games that still has couch co-op. It's like a good 50 plus hours of game, and they have guns with legs.
Guns with legs.
So it's like a romantic thing.
Yeah, the guns with legs.
That's the romantic part. I played Borderlands 1 and didn't finish it, but that's admittedly because of the game. I played it with my brother, which was, I do have fond memories of that, couch co-op, but it was super long. I do remember that. It was very long. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Borderlands 3.
A lot of content.
So when does that drop?
Oh, man. I know, I want to say it was like maybe September. I should look this up real quick.
TBD. Let's take a look.
Well, while we look up the release date of that game, there was also a potential leak on a couple other games for the Nintendo Switch.
Go on.
Sorry, I thought you were going to segue in.
I mean, I'm happy to if you like. I think this is your thing.
A combined Metroid Prime trilogy is one that I'm super hyped about. I haven't seen a good Metroid Prime title release since the GameCube, for those of you who remember that one. And yes, I know Metroid 4 is coming out soon, but
maybe. We'll see, I guess.
So there's that. There's also potentially A Link to the Past, or Zelda A Link to the Past, and Wind Walker. So a couple different games, and I'm excited to that. I like the Zelda trilogy, and I like the Metroid trilogy, and I think that they're both kind of staples for the Nintendo console. So let's go.
Borderlands is September 13th. It was so hard to find that. It took like a really long time for me to find the release date. Supposedly it's September 13th. I love Metroid Prime. That is my response to everything you just said. Might buy a Switch. We were talking before this. I might buy a Switch just to play Metroid Prime again. Like, that's a good enough reason for me to buy a multi-$100 console.
I mean, I think, didn't we even get you a GameCube so that you could play Metroid?
Oh, and I've since played it with that GameCube, so thank you. I think I played all the two of them that are on the GameCube. I think I played them all the way through. Because at this point, I've played those games through like probably 10 times each, but they get better. They get better with age.
Like a fine wine.
I would strongly encourage it for anyone who is looking for an oldie but a goodie. To wrap up, let's recap. Ooh, this is exciting for me. Guys, season 2 of the Fantasy Movie League has begun. I will say, a little disappointed in the fans. No one else has joined. It's still just us three. Come on, guys. We're inviting you. It's supposed to be special.
I think maybe they're just scared of our great movie knowledge and prowess.
Well, with that said, let's take a look at the leaderboard. We are through 2 weeks of season 2 right now. We're headed into week 3. And can one of you tell me who has won both weeks?
All right, so Illegal is currently in the lead in our league. He has won both weeks so far.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just waiting for that other shoe to drop and him to just forget to set a lineup some week.
That's always a risk. You know, that's, in terms of, like, things that I'm threatened by right now in this league, number one is definitely me forgetting to set a lineup. Also worth noting, week 2 was extremely close across the board. Like, I think I barely beat Nerd Bomber. Yeah, I beat her by less than $1 million. Just about $500,000. Week 1, though, I blew the doors off the competition. I will say that much. Stay tuned for more updates as I try to go for the clean sweep 10 for 10. It's never going to happen. I will say that.
What do you think was your biggest surprise in the last couple of weeks in terms of the movie performances that we've seen?
Oh, goodness. Well, I do have to say that the week that I did as well as I did, I had 5 screens showing 5 feet apart, which looks like basically, apologies in advance if you really enjoyed this movie, but it looks like A Fault in Our Stars knockoff.
Bless you.
It just wow, he's really going for it over there. It happened to be the right price point for me to just pick Us and Captain Marvel and then fill the rest of my screens efficiently. I knew I wanted both of those movies, and then after that, whatever happened. So I guess it was surprising for me that was seemingly the X factor that caused me to do as well as I did. Week 2, I placed a gamble on this movie. I have this like strategy going right now. I don't want to give away too much of my strategy, but if you look at the past 2 weeks, my clear strategy is to pick like 2 to 3 movies that I think are going to be good.
And then, just go ham.
And then like the rest of the other 5 are the same movie that's probably not very good. So that's working out. Feel free to steal that strategy, but you'll never do it better than me. Maybe.
I don't know. There was 1 week last quote-unquote season where I had the perfect lineup.
Yeah, you were like, you were like, the only reason you weren't best on the website was because of the tiebreaker, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which like, wow. I've never even sniffed that. Like I always, whenever I look at my week like total, it's like, oh, you could have, if you played this, you would have made double. And I'm like, what the? And it's like Bohemian Rhapsody 7 times, and then like what? It's like, I don't even know that movie's making money.
See, there's a clear-cut strategy, and I don't want to give mine away because every now and then I'll hit big, and it'll work out for me. But it involves a lot of research, and that's part of the reason I've been slacking and falling behind. I just haven't had the time to do the research.
Yeah, my research is typically a 2 to 3 minute process. I'll out myself there and just say that as effort, and if any of you are afraid to join because you're afraid it's going to be too much effort to keep up with the big boys, I wouldn't worry about it too much. That's especially since I'll probably miss a week. Like that'll give you an instant leg up on the competition. So we'd love to have someone, a fourth player, but
more competition is a good thing.
Yeah, if we don't get that, we're just going to keep going and see what happens. So stay tuned. And thank you, as always, for listening.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate all of you. We don't, it's a good point. We don't say that enough. We appreciate you all so much. All of you that are listening, we'd love to hear from you, but if you want to just stay and like silently listen in your cave, I'm happy with that too.
I have tried to be a little bit more active on the Twitter account. Not working out super well, but I think I did like 2 tweets last week. That's pretty big.
Well, you heard it here first. Our social media strategy is being revamped. So you'll probably be seeing us pretty soon on like the front page of Reddit and like front page of CNN, places like that. So getting on the ground floor. And yeah, we appreciate you. And we hope you all have a wonderful next couple of weeks, and we'll talk at you then.
All right. Adios, everyone.
Sayonara.